What's good, y'all? It's been another few days since the past one, and honestly, I might as well just kind of explain my behavior during that time. I was definitely either feeling very guilty for not really upholding a promise that I made to myself to, one, run the mile, and two, kind of keep up these daily journals because, well, this was primarily made for me, and feeling like I couldn't really keep up those commitments definitely was a pretty hard blow to basically kind of just me feeling, I guess, confident in general. But what I've kind of learned, at least running the mile again, and at least accomplishing that without feeling like I just don't want to do anything anymore afterwards, gives me hope that at least, like, despite the setback, I can at least kind of push back before. And, well, let's just say that the same thoughts have been more or less running my mind, kind of things that I do want to talk about with other people, but not really things I can really fit into, like, everyday conversation, I feel, in most cases. I just feel like sometimes, I don't know, this is probably my only time where I'm probably the center of attention, and I'd rather hear what other people have to say in conversation. So I don't know, maybe I can just contribute one or two things about it, possibly about myself, but I don't know. It's really not easy still opening up myself, especially since, like, I very rarely talk to people. But anyways, I'll get to today's topic. So yesterday I was basically kind of hanging out with some family, having a pretty good time actually, because I thought it was just going to be a lunch, but we ended up spending like the whole day at my cousin's house, and it was pretty fun actually. And it kind of got me thinking about, I guess, my past, because, well, growing up I never really thought of myself, I guess, like, had any thoughts of myself, honestly, I feel like, and kind of just want to take the time to, I don't know, psychoanalyze myself, though don't really know if, like, this testimony would really be the best reflection of who I was when I was younger, though I am still pretty young, I guess, by today's standards, only like 20 years old. So I'll start off by probably talking about probably my days in grade school or elementary school, but for some reason I guess grade school just sounds more makes more sense in my mind rather than elementary school. But anyways, childhood was honestly nothing too harsh. Had like a stable background growing up, a house, um, always food on the plate, and two younger siblings along with my parents and my grandparents. Just seven of us kind of living in a house. And I'll admit, it's definitely a bit young, so I remember at least going to the same school for 7 years and living right down the street, actually. Still do, actually. So it was quite an easy walk just to get there and back, and we didn't really need to drive a car. But, I don't know. I do remember having one particular friend who we always used to watch, like, or talked about, like, Tom and Jerry, I believe it was. That was pretty fun, honestly, because didn't really have to worry about, like, how I was doing in school, though. I will definitely admit that I'm pretty sure I was definitely on my teacher's good sides. If not, like, the teacher's pet, honestly. Like, for me, I guess, I was always just doing pretty well in school, I guess. Always had the same teacher for, like, 2 consecutive years, except kindergarten, actually. So I think that at least kind of adds some evidence that I'm pretty sure it was somewhat liked by my teachers. I don't really know, because never really talked with them, though I do remember particularly being a quiet kid, honestly. Still think I am relative to other people, but I'm a lot more spoken than I guess I was before. I also remember being particularly doing a lot better in math compared to other subjects, I guess. I didn't particularly hate the other subjects, even English, honestly, but I will admit I felt like I had a bit more enjoyment with math, mainly because, I don't know, I thought it was just fun kind of learning the multiplication tables and I guess division tables in third grade. And then eventually I got to a point where I started learning higher grade maths on my own, except one year actually, where I was basically learning like pre-algebra, like middle school math, with like a bunch of other kids like the grade above me. I was in fifth grade, and there were a bunch of other kids in sixth grade. And truth be told, when I thought of upperclassmen at the time, I thought they were like very big, very scary, because I was still like a pretty small kid back then. Wasn't really tall or anything from what I remember. But from what I remember, at least with most of the sixth graders back when I was in fifth grade, the ones I hung out with were pretty fun to hang out with, and even played at recess. So totally changed my mindset on kind of kids who weren't within my grade, at least for the upper grades. Since I still had two younger siblings, especially one of them still being in elementary school while I was almost done with elementary school, still call them as just little kids. So, what do you expect? Trying to mature while you're still young, right? But I'd be lying if I said that I was completely a good kid back then. Because I will admit, was still pretty shy. So, though sometimes I do open up, it was very rare. So, felt like not really many people really knew me that well, except that I was at least trying my best not to be a jerk, I guess. At least I thought that I've seen people being jerks to other people, I guess. And I guess my mom was just like, yeah, maybe I don't want to be that. It just doesn't really make sense to me at all why you would want to be particularly rude or mean to someone, I guess, if it just causes some negative reaction. And one other thing I do remember, actually, is I definitely remember having quite a lot of instances where I cried. I don't know. I guess those are probably the few times where I could just kind of let out my emotions, but also some moments where I did cry were kind of a bit ridiculous when I thought about it, honestly. Definitely did cry a lot when I did get in trouble because I thought probably that it would be like the end of the world or something. Like, I remember my dad telling me growing up that if you basically get in trouble, even if, like, no matter what trouble you get in, something along these lines at least, then it's going to be stuck with you forever. And no matter what you tell people, they'll only see that, like, that incident where you got in trouble. And if that's the reputation that you hold up, then other people will find it a lot harder to trust in you. And maybe I thought I was letting down my dad just by getting myself in trouble, even though they were only for the smallest incidents. I do remember getting attention one time, so definitely was somewhat justified, but also I guess I was at least reassured during that time when I was definitely the most in trouble that just because you were in trouble, that doesn't mean that you can't like move past that. It took me a while to learn that actually, because I was a lot older when I got that first attention, and still kind of hits me back honestly. Don't really remember doing much outside of school except like my parents just getting me into like a bunch of programs. Them being Viet school, basically church school, but also like a little church program that I was part of for a while called CUNY. I don't know if I pronounced that right since it's been forever since I've visited, but it's been a part of me so long that at least I can remember that. I also remember taking piano lessons, playing a little bit of basketball too, though. I wasn't particularly athletic back then, mainly because I didn't really do that many sports. But, I don't know, when I think of elementary school, I definitely think of good moments, or times where it felt like that I definitely had the least worries. Mainly because, honestly, I feel like I'm pretty simple-minded. And also because never really talked too much with anyone and felt like I tried my best to kind of avoid trouble, that like never really had too many of those problems in my life. And also that family was pretty stable back then, and I will admit, um, definitely feel close to my family because I've definitely spent a lot of time with them because probably for most of my childhood, I always went to visit my grandparents every weekend and always saw my cousins, and even though we were all kind of different ages and stuff, still had some fun, kind of just imagining stuff and whatever. Wasn't really the leader of it, it was definitely one of my other cousins, but it was just fun kind of playing along and not really worrying too much about stuff. Though I will admit, the only thing I probably regret most about my childhood in relation to my family is I do feel like I could have gotten a lot closer with my siblings, especially my sister, who 5 years apart. So not we didn't really have much time to really, I don't know, kind of see each other around in school or really kind of talk about much, especially since like I don't know. Felt it was pretty hard to relate with her since we kind of just had very different interests. I do think that I would be open to kind of hear whatever she says, and maybe one day, if I have the courage enough, might talk with either of them every once in a while, but I'm still kind of stuck in my shell for now. Kind of like how I was back in elementary school. I still kind of think I'm mostly in my shell for most of my time now. And probably for the foreseeable future, I kind of still imagine myself kind of being stuck in that shell. But the moments where I guess I was able to just, I don't know, move out of that shell and just kind of wander around. Never really, very rarely, if at all, just regretted ever walking out of that shell. And if I did, I'd probably say that was probably because I thought it was just embarrassing or could have some negative impact on me or whatever. But I will admit, because I definitely remember feeling that me having so many instances where I've just kind of let my tears speak for myself rather than just my words, kind of felt like it was just time to just shut them all in. Not just my emotions of sadness, I guess, but also most other emotions, I guess. And I found it quite easy because I don't really talk that much. So if you don't talk much, you don't really let out anything, including your emotions. Yeah, I realize now that bottling up my emotions is not particularly healthy for me now. But I do still tend to kind of act towards bottling my emotions simply because I think I'm being selfless or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, I guess, I've figured out, or I've just spent so much time just kind of in my own head and thinking that I'm just alone, that it's just kind of second nature to me to just expect that I'm going to be on my own no matter where I go. I think I kind of learned that in elementary school because I feel like because I was doing pretty well in school, it was very hard to kind of get close with other people, especially considering that I was also pretty quiet too. I do remember using Facebook back then, but I'd never really used it to really chat with other people because I wasn't really close with other people. And plus, I remember also accidentally losing my Facebook account in like grade school, so I had to make a new one in middle school. But by the end of elementary school, I will admit there is quite a gap between then and when I started high school. I may or may not cover that in the next part because I will try my best to kind of recall what I had in middle school, but also just keep in mind that middle school for me was probably the moment where I definitely wanted to repress the most. Even though there were very small moments, I'm really trying my best to remember. It's just hard without remembering kind of the struggles because middle school was just like, I guess, a moment where I just felt the most struggles, and I will admit, there are times that I feel now that have felt pretty similar to when I was in middle school, so that definitely is not fun. But that's probably a wrap on basically me in elementary school. Just your average, relatively doing well in school. Not the most athletic, pretty quiet person, but as far as I know, I tried my best not to get myself into trouble or try not to be rude or mean to others in any way because it just didn't really feel right in my nature. Anyways, I think that's basically most of me as probably a 5-year-old to 12-year-old. And hopefully I don't actually um, forget what middle school was, because thinking about it now and thinking that there were still good times even though there were pretty rough times in elementary school, that middle school is just more or less the same thing except probably a bit more than that. Alright, this is a long video, so I'm just gonna get going. And honestly, I don't really care too much about the length of these videos anymore since, like, let's be real. I am just a guy literally talking to you on a screen right now. If you expected any other content, I mean, there's millions of other videos around. But if you're around, thanks. I appreciate it. I hope to at least kind of continue this to the end of the month every day, since there's only, what, 11 days after this? It's the 20th, yeah. Yeah, but whew, hope to see you then. It has been a long video, and I will see you tomorrow.